Karaffa, and if you've noticed his beautiful work, and there's a little summary on your paper that the first page there about Bill. But I went a little bit deeper and looked on Facebook, and when he was it 13 or 14?
13.
13. He worked, he went down to Carnegie Mellon, and were you in that drawing group?
I was in Tam O'Shanter's, and then I went up to pre-college at CMU.
And had talent, at an early age. And then he went on to become an engineer. And then kind of let it go, to the side, and things happened. And then he's just started to really, when did you start?
Probably back into it about 2016, so about 3 years now.
Just started right back after, 43 years, did you say he sat away from his art? So, look what he's accomplished. It's just amazing. And he's joined all these groups and become members of Pittsburgh Society of Artists, where he's, the exhibitions chair. And that's how I met Bill and got to know him. He's in the McMurray Art League, the Portrait Society of America, Pittsburgh Pastel League. And so he's just really active down in Pittsburgh now. And it's really an honor to have him here because he does classical realism. And then he just kind of goes into another the background has imagination and another world. And he meets with a lot of drawing groups down in Pittsburgh. And we're going to miss, isn't Panza not going to be around there for a while? They're moving, aren't they?
But we're going to start a replacement up in January.
Okay, so he's the man to talk to if you want to do any figure drawing down in Pittsburgh. And he always seems to do the same model, Adam X.
Yeah, I only have one study piece here from that.
Yeah, John Singer Sargent is a person that he highly regards, and he studied in Florence, Italy. So you can visit a site. Is it?
I would suggest you follow along with this Instagram site, and you'll be able to see the images a little bit better as I go through. But thanks, Mary, for the introduction. Pardon me? No, I think you can see a little bit better with that. Yeah. Yeah, thank you again for the introduction. As Mary said, I'm basically back into this new for about 3 years, and I've gone at it pretty intensely with the intent to just kind of follow up and complete some what I consider unfinished business. Answering some questions about, well, what would it have been like if I would have pursued art in lieu of an engineering career, and so this is helping me complete those questions that still were unresolved in my mind. So I'm having a lot of fun doing this work and getting involved with some of the art community here in Pittsburgh and then abroad. My work this year's been a good breakout year for me, and some of my work it's been juried into national shows, and I have a couple pieces now out in the middle of the state in some big portraiture and figurative shows, and I'm hoping something might break through with Portrait Society of America here in the next few months. So it's been a nice self-challenge for myself. I don't look at it as a competition amongst artists. I enjoy meeting all the artists and getting everybody's perspectives and hearing about their individual journeys. But for me, this is all about me setting goals every month for myself and saying after every piece and say, where do I need to go to next? What's the level that I want to go to? I look at a lot of really established artists, both nationally and internationally. I say, well, what do I need to do if I want to try to get there? And then I set my goals and I try to accomplish them. Subsequently, you're going to find me doing a lot of drawing on a weekly basis. I do these portraits, these figure drawings, at least once or twice a week formally in studio, and then at home I'll do a lot of drawing just in preparation for some of the bigger oil painting projects I do. I work in big charcoal, I work in oil paint. I do a little bit of work in watercolor and gouache, but primarily when you see one of my finished works, it's going to be in oil. And that's actually a modest-sized painting right there. I usually work on the order of 5 foot by 4 foot, 6 foot by 4 foot. I was just telling Mary and Kathy that we're going to be starting a project with one of the models that works here, Catherine's Apollo. Probably in a couple weeks, we're going to do a double character diptych piece that will end up being about 6 foot by 8 foot oil painting on canvas. So I like to work big.
Bill, where do you teach? You teach in a couple places.
Yeah, I will get into that. Yeah, I actually do workshops, anywhere from single 3-hour workshops to multiple day workshops. And in January, I'm going to be teaching formally both figurative and portrait art. I'll be teaching up at Sweetwater Center for the Arts in Sewickley, PA. I'll be teaching beginning about the middle to end of January, a 7-week portrait drawing and painting class on Tuesday evenings, and then about a 3-week break, and then I'll be doing a 6-week figurative drawing class once a week on Thursdays. So check out them if you're interested in that kind of thing. I also do intensive workshops. In February, I'll be doing a 2-day, 6-hour-a-day figurative workshop at McMurray Art League in Peters Township, so that's something you might want to keep an eye on. So I'm doing a lot of teaching and talks like this, and although everybody associates me with figurative and portrait, I do a lot of outdoor work with landscapes. You might have seen, if you came to Martini's and Monet, you may have seen a couple of my, I got James Tillman, there we go. You might have seen a couple of my pieces here in the show. You can just see some of my other pieces there. All these on the site that you'll see, these portraits are done within a matter of a few minutes, half an hour to 2 hour alla prima drawings or paintings. So I train my eye to capture form fairly quick, and then use that into my finished work. Here's the piece that Kathy was mentioning. It's a large 7 foot by 4 painting as far as a reimagination of John Singer Sargent's Madam X. That's been sitting up there for about a good 9 months now, and I have to get back to it. There's a study piece, color study piece for the actual portrait that's in this painting. But I was getting at some of the outdoor work that I do. And when you want it, you can't find it. I apologize. I had a presentation ready for this, and I left my drive in my computer at home, so that doesn't do us any good. But anyway, if you look on this Instagram site, you can go through and see the variety of drawings that I do in open studios or in my own studio. I hire models. All of this work you see here is pretty much, with the exception of a couple sketches over there, everything's done from life, and then I convey that into my formal paintings. I like to convey stories, messages within my paintings. So the painting you see there is one of a series of 5 that I'm doing on societal pressures about everybody needs to be looking like something, doing something to be considered reaching a perfect level. So I'm always challenging societal norms I finished up a couple paintings that were related to eating disorders and the global food economy and how we're kind of driven to eat a certain way, do a certain thing, yet our Western culture is afflicted with a lot of eating disorders. So those are the kind of themes and topics I go after in my paintings. But to do that, I do a lot of practice with drawing. So what we're going to try to do here is I got pens in hand, chalks in hand, and a piece of paper, and Mary, your program director, has kindly agreed to volunteer as a model. And what I'm going to try to do here is show you only just the beginning of how I go about getting a portrait developed on a piece of paper. Usually I can get something fairly formal within a 2-hour period. So these are like 2-hour sessions. That centerpiece is a 2-hour session. But for tonight, we're just going to show you something that's more on the order of a quick sketch, just to give you an idea how I approach a portrait problem. And what I do is I look at everything in terms of shape. I profess this in my lessons whenever I teach. I focus people in on looking in a way that you see shapes from big and then move into the small. And don't worry about the details until the very end. Everybody wants to draw that eye or those lips right off the bat. We're looking for shapes. So when I look at a person, I'm looking at those key shapes that are going to help define that person's image, that person's proportions, and then, of course, their likeness. So if you all want to pull chairs closer, I'm going to work right here on this easel. I'm going to sit also. I'm going to kind of talk through my process as we do this. And by all means, if you have questions that you want to just ask, I might have my back a little bit towards you, but I'll be happy to try to talk and answer questions, you know, at the same time. Walk and chew gum, that's what this is. Normally what I would do when I set up an easel, you want to normally get your eye level about equal to the eye level of the subject. I have it a little bit high today, or this evening, because I want to have you be able to see this as I go about doing this. You want to keep your easel also about as vertical as you can. I'm going to start a clock here just to give myself a little bit of an idea where I'm at in terms of time. When I look across here at Mary, and Mary's got a good look, you can maybe want to look out here somewhere, maybe a little bit lower. That's good right about there. A little bit up. There we go. That's good. So what I'm doing, as I said before, is I'm starting to evolve some shape in here in Mary's face, in her head. So I'm getting somewhere on here where I'm going to put Mary in reality, and I'm going to start bounding things. And I'm using a big soft piece of charcoal right now because eventually what I'm going to do is I'm going to either take this little sponge or I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to start wiping these original marks out. Okay, so right now I'm not worried at all about glasses or eyes or nose or anything. I'm just getting roughly informed where eyes might lie, where base of nose might lie, where mouth might lie. You can see these indicator lines. I might even start looking at trying to form some of the shadow shapes where I'm seeing some of my darks in Mary's face right now. As far as an eye, even I want to approach an eye, I'm looking at sockets. Where does her eyes lie within depth inside this form in the sockets? So her eyes are going to recess back, so I'm looking at those big shapes, as I said before. Starting to build around. I'm not really getting into too much detail even on the form as of yet. I'm creating all these shapes sort of geometrically. And I'm just trying to find her a little bit. And again, everything's adjusted. It's a constant adjustment as we move along. So once I get my initial marks done, then I might switch off to one of my other charcoal pencils, and I have various weights right here. I'm using a mid-tone because I can go both directions. If you're familiar with a value scale of 1 to 10, 1 being white, 10 to being black, this paper is going to be about a 5. So that means things are going to be lighter. I'm going to use white chalk to lift that up higher, or I can use charcoal to push it down darker. So now I'm going to go back. I'm going to try to refine some of these shapes a little bit. Again, I'm not even worried. I'm looking beyond her glasses right now. I might get a little quiet as I squint and look in, but again, feel free if you want to ask any questions at all.
Bill, the paper that you use for the preliminary sketches,
Yeah.
Is it anything archival or?
This is archival paper. It's Strathmore, like a 400 or 500 series basic tone drawing paper. It's not the best in the world, but it's also not the cheapest in the world. But I buy them in pads because I draw so much that it's just more economical to go this route. I do, when I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do something much more formal, like that big paper over there with Catherine on it, that's probably about $6 a sheet or whatever. But when I get into my formal charcoal work, or if I'm doing a real finished charcoal piece, I'll get into papers that run anywhere from $10 to $20 a sheet. But that's where you've done a lot of upfront study work and your preliminary work, developmental work, and you know your subject, and you're going to make as few mistakes as you can. The other thing is that I use a lot of erasure, so I use a lot of lifting technique, where I'll get real dark with the charcoal sometimes, and then I'll use an eraser to lift it out, make highlights, and so it's got to be a quality paper that can handle that kind of abuse.
Do you ever frame these pieces?
I work so large that framing, you mean the study work?
Yes.
No, that's about the only, that one African American portrait, I did that in an open session in a couple hours at Panza, and I turned that into a painting, and that painting will be, I think it might be the painting that's shown in the advertisement, I believe. Is there one in there with a kind of an African American goddess? Somebody was holding something that looked. Is that on there? Okay, it's in my Instagram site. You can find it. But anyway, that piece will be on display at the brew house in January and through February for a show of Southside artists from the city of Pittsburgh. And myself and another local artist, Andy Spanadakis, he's also a PSA member. He's going to be, he'll be in the show also. There's going to be 14 artists and 28 pieces. So that'll be one of them. And then one of my more recent large-scale charcoals will be in that show as well. So, again, I'm moving myself around here, again, trying to say more geometric than anything. I'm not even starting to develop any form right now, so we're about 7 minutes in. I'm using kind of a harder charcoal right now, just to keep my line work a little bit lighter, in case when I wipe this out, it'll come out easily with my hand. I also use this thing here. It's a Scotch-Brite, kind of a dishwasher thing. For washing dishes, I cut them up into little pieces. It's kind of bristly on one side and a sponge on the other. If you hit it with the bristle, you'll kind of burnish in rather than wipe out the charcoal. So it's a nice technique that I actually got taught by Cesar Santos when I studied with him in Florence, Italy this past year. And he's kind of one of the preeminent young figurative and portrait artists that there are out there nowadays. And he's kind of fighting that battle of you know, trying to find realism's place, rightful place, some of us would say, back in contemporary art, because it's kind of lost a little bit of its standing. So that's the techniques, the styles that I kind of trained under when I was young, and I kind of adhere to now. Where I get contemporary, like I said before, is more or less in the subject matter, where I take modern societal issues, things that just frankly piss me off, and I paint about them, and that's what I do. So I'm gonna go with a little bit softer now, charcoal. See if I can't hone her in a little bit closer. I can now start thinking a little bit more about glasses, now that I set some eyes. And we were mentioning before about drawing in Pittsburgh. There's tons of places now, even though we talked about Panza suspending their sessions. There's a lot going on. Myself and another fellow artist, we're trying to stand up a replacement Monday night 3-hour long pose, portrait and figurative. It's going to be at Wilkins Community Center, which is the home for the Pittsburgh Society of Artists. And pardon me?
And my studio.
And Carol's studio, that's correct. And it'll be the same price, $10 on Monday night, 6:30 to 9:30. And there'll be emails out. And if you're interested on that, you know, we can get a hold of me or whichever, and we can get you on the email list. There's also, I don't know how many people are keen on going to tattoo parlors, but I paint or draw portraits, pure portraits, every other Tuesday evening at Artisan Tattoo up in Garfield on Penn Avenue. So you'll find me there pretty much just doing straight up portraits. Do figures. Just did figures this morning with Mary Jane and Gilberti. So you're going to find me drawing. If I'm not in my studio, I work out of my house. That's where my studio is, and I've taken 2 rooms and turned one into kind of like my dining room / posing room, but whatever. And then the other one is where I set up about three studio easels at any one time to work on my big work. Usually what I do first time around when I get a new, somebody new that we usually get them as close as we can the first time, but usually by the second session I'm in with them.
How long does your session usually go?
How long do my sessions?
Yeah.
Usually, first time, usually if it's the first time I'm seeing a new model, I like 2 hours the first time. Gives me a chance to, explore facial shapes, and then I'll keep some notes, and then next time I see them, I usually recognize corrections right off the bat. I do use general rules of kind of thumb as far as I keep in the back of my mind. They're not concrete, they're guidelines, like as far as proportioning. Where do the eyes normally fall on the human face relative to the overall head proportion versus where do those lips fall? About the halfway point, about your nose, bottom of your nose, and then you got about a third up here where the brow line will fall, and then the lower third is about where the mouth is. But again, everybody has subtle variations to that, but I still try to hold myself to that because it keeps you initially in the correct playing field off the get-go. Okay, we're down to about 15 minutes here that we did this. So we're going to find some shadow here, going under. And for some of you who take sessions or lessons, you'll hear about, everybody tells you to squint. And that's good because what squinting does is it obliterates the details that everybody has a tendency to want to go right to as far as the initial drawing. So by squinting, you'll take away all those details automatically, and you will just see shapes of various values, darks and lights. And it'll kind of key in on that and force you to stay within the realm of shapes. As I get to know the model more, if I'm familiar with them or familiar with a particular pose, you'll see me very little look at the model. You'll see my head swinging like there's something wrong, and that's just me finding another way to obliterate details. And the tendency to dig into details is I just start swinging my head rapidly, and I hardly look at some of these models eventually as I get to know them. So in about 20 minutes, you can get something relatively close, not perfect, but relatively close. And then over the course, Usually we break the models at about 20-minute sessions. And then what you can do is from there on out, start making adjustments in the subsequent sessions. With a little practice, after a few of those sessions, those additional sessions, you can get it a lot tighter in. We're down to about 2 minutes, and then we'll break here. And we can see what we want to do. Anybody here know Phil Salvato? Yeah, I did Phil's portrait last year in conjunction with our Pittsburgh Society of Artists annual. We were trying to get people to come in while there was some sitting going on. And so I said, Phil, what do you want to do? I'm going to paint your portrait. And he said, okay. So in the course of about, probably about 8 hours, I sat him twice, well, 2.5 times. And we came up with a nice portrait for him. That was oil painting. That was alla prima. That was alla prima painting. Phil's a character. Anybody know him personally? And his love for what do you call it? The zodiac. Oh yeah, he's big into it. I didn't. Yeah, I'm a Capricorn. I found out, and everything else. He goes, "What house are you in?" I'm going like, "What are you talking about? I'm in your studio drawing here." So I learned all about that last year. He's a good guy. Good artist too. So is anybody here a member? I know a couple people here are members of Pittsburgh Society of Artists. Yep. Lady right here. Yep. Got it good? Okay, good. Yeah, I'm the exhibition chair. And that's why I have that tired, delusion, despaired face always going. So this is what 20 minutes can get you. And it needs to be refined as you box it in. So the next time around, we would, we're going to keep going, maybe a little bit more.
Let me just stretch.
Go ahead and stretch. You guys want to see a little bit more?
And then Mary could sit still.
Okay.
Quiet that long.
Okay. Yeah, what I do at this point a lot of times on my papers, I just scrub them out, I rub them out, and then start doing eraser work.
I think you're a candidate for a 6x8.
Yeah.
Karaffa.
All right.
But exhibition, I was talking about exhibitions. I don't know if anybody here, who's the exhibition chair for Cranberry?
Vicky.
Oh, you look tired and despondent too. I should have picked you out right away. That's why I always look tired.
Plus the back hall there, she does that too.
Oh, wow.
It's like constant.
Okay, we're blessed. No, it's fulfilling. It's tiring. I wouldn't lie, but it definitely rewarding. We got a lot of great artists in PSA. We just closed out our annual last Friday, and Mary was in it. Larry was in it.
People.
Yeah, we had a lot of people in it. Mary Jane was in it.
Sold her piece.
Kathy sold her piece in it.
Yeah.
So that was great. So, yeah, we're going to be kicking in next year, start trying to pick our galleries and get on with it. So what do you think?
Oh, how much more? How long?
What do you want to do?
Are we good or?
We want to do 15 minutes or something, just see, try to how I go around this a little bit more?
Maybe
Or questions?
Questions or?
I don't want to hold anybody
I have a
up.
question about the thick piece of charcoal that you're using. What is that? What kind of charcoal?
What is it? I
What
use,
kind is it?
my better charcoals, I get into these sticks. These are made by Nitram Charcoal, Nitram, and they're a more refined
Yeah.
charcoal. And actually, my actual charcoal sticks are over there. This is just a bold one. I have charcoals that are, I'm not lying to you, they're that round. And when I do one of my big charcoal pieces, which get on the order of like 4 foot by 3 foot charcoal pieces as big as that painting, I start with these big blocks of charcoal and I rub them in.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where I do a lot of that lifting technique.
I have a question for you. The piece you had in the PSA that had a huge black background,
Yeah, that's the example. I'm using charcoals like this.
okay, that didn't have glass on it, did it?
No, because I don't like to show my charcoals. I seal them, I spray them solid.
Spray 'em.
I spray them solid, but I don't like to show, I don't like glass. One, it's heavy. Two, it's expensive. Three, it puts a glare on a piece that I just,
Do you mount it on something?
what?
Your drawing?
Yeah, it's mounted on a foam board.
Mount,
It should have been floated, that one. He matted it.
is the mounting done before? Is the paper mount?
Oh, you mean when I'm drawing?
Yeah.
Oh, I have a piece of wood that's 5 foot by 4 foot. It's actually a wood panel that you would paint on. I take and I got sheets of paper, I have rolls of paper, but I have sheets of paper that are like 50 inches by 38 inches, and I'll stretch it taut. I might even spray it a little bit.
Yeah.
And then just like watercolor paper, I staple it on the edges, then I tape a 1-inch border with blue tape, painter's tape, and then I go from there.
But then when you framed it, is it mounted on something?
Yeah, there's usually a foam board behind it or a mat.
Is it glued or?
No, usually it's got archival tape, or I like them floated. You ever see a floated
Yeah.
piece where it comes off? That's the way that, yeah, I did that one. I just put a piece of foam board. That's my little butcher job of floating it.
Okay, so
Okay,
that's
but
floated.
yeah, professional float, a hinge mount, will take it off just slightly. And I like that presentation because I like to see the decal edge on drawings. Yeah. So, yeah, but that's all multiple layers of charcoal, the one you saw at PSA.
That was so glass.
Yeah, I just finished the second in that series. It's on my Instagram site, but it doesn't show up well here. Like I said, go on Instagram and you can see them.
What spray do you use?
I'll hit Blair Workable Fixative at first, and I might make some adjustments after that. You want to do a little bit more? Oh yeah, just go ahead and take a. And then what I'll do is I'll once I'm done adjusting what I think I'm going to adjust, then what I'll do is I'll take Winsor Newton permanent, and you lay them flat.
Yeah.
You don't do them vertical, you lay them flat, and then you spray this way and let the fixative fall on it. If you spray into a charcoal piece, especially with fine charcoal, you're going to knock that charcoal right off. So yeah, you want to lay it down. Even a pastel. I know some pastel artists don't like to fix their work. I fix my pastels.
So you lay it on the ground?
I lay 'em
You
flat.
Spray in the air like and let the spray fall down?
Yep, and you let it spray down. For pastels, I use Art Fix. It's a casein milk base. What's it called? Art Flex or Spectre Flex or whatever it's called. Yeah, it's milk based, and it's not toxic, and it will it'll at first you might look like it's darkening your pastel, but it does lighten as it dries. So, you know, in the classes I would teach on portrait, we would be doing this kind of a step at a much slower pace initially. I'd be talking shape, big time, right off the bat. And do a few exercises to build on on building and recognizing shapes within shapes. And I always, one of the things, and I really stress this in my figurative classes and my figurative work itself. I always talk about something that, anybody hear of Nelson Shanks? Mm-hmm. Okay, and he always had it right. He goes, the energy is in the start. He goes, your finish on a painting or anything like that is only as good as your start. It's all about the start. The energy that comes out of you at the beginning of a piece is kind of key. So, there's all kind of aids and things, music, some people use, whatever. Cigarette, a beer, whatever. Just to get yourself, I kind of get myself tuned in when I'm doing something serious because I want to go after it hard and quick on the get-go. I actually had my portrait painted in Florence by that gentleman, Cesar Santos, if you're familiar with that artist at all. I studied under him in Florence in June, and he asked the people in his workshop, anybody want to sit for his demo for an hour and a half? And I go, me? I said, what the heck? So I have an original 45-minute Cesar Santos in my studio now of me. So that was fun. That was a good ornament. And he's represented by a lot of big galleries in New York, and then a lot in Miami. He's out of Miami, so he's big down in there. When I come back into this, I did a lot of the same stuff everybody does. I started painting family members, their pets, and that kind of stuff. I did a lot of thematic stuff that was kind of like Pittsburgh themed. Did some stuff down in Market Square, but put together kind of stories. And I said, that's okay, but I kind of want to say a few things with the work. So I'm just going to mass tone this right here, but you can just see in a few more minutes, you do another roundabout.
You putting any jewelry in there?
No jewelry. You want your jewelry in?
Yeah.
Okay, here, Okay, we'll put her jewelry in here, okay. We got to put her jewelry in. This thing. What's the title of this thing? Oh, you didn't title this one.
She doesn't remember what she's wearing and she can't remember.
Did you still got the, what was it, pigs and bacon and?
Yeah, bacon.
Bacon and eggs?
Last brunch.
Oh, I like that one. I'm not so much in, jewelry's great in that, but I don't spend a lot of time on the jewelry in portraiture unless it's a really significant piece, has a lot of meaning to the person. To me, and I teach classes specific to this, is hands are to me, as big a part of a portrait. People don't use them enough, but incorporating hands in some way into the portrait is very important. You can send a lot of emotion and a lot of message with hands. So I teach classes on hand. A lot of people know that I use a lot of hands, like in these paintings. And you can see over there in the study work, just playing around with hands.
So next time, get him to draw your hands with lots of rings on them.
Okay, so I would pull your lip up here more. If I can find an eraser. Pull you in more here. So you start looking and you start finding just that adjustment brought her mouth in better view. There she is here. There she is here. This is a little bit more merry than it was a few seconds ago. So this is just a matter, again, of looking around and finding things. And so I would just continue as far as going more and more into this. I would spend, each session I would begin it and look and see where either tone or shape would give me a little bit more of her, as far as likeness, a little bit more of her. And we kind of get there. Small, subtle changes, minutia movements in the position of an eye or a lip or something can be a big difference in portraiture. Big difference. And anatomy is important. I talked about, people always, I profess this in my classes is, they say, why do you spend so much time on understanding the shape, how is an eye composed, or a nose composed, or the neck is composed? And I say, well, whether you're using it working from life or whether you're working from a photograph, that might obliterate the lighting, or the photograph itself might obliterate some anatomical feature that is there in a shadow or in a highlight. In other words, it'll just blow it out with a highlight or darken it with a shadow, but that thing exists there, and so you need to be able to reconstruct that based on your knowledge of anatomy. So that's why I say it's good to understand the anatomy besides just reproducing a picture. So I'm going to leave it here, okay? And is there any more questions?
Very nice.
Okay.
I want you to sign it, Bill.
Sure.
Please.
I thank Mary because she was very gracious to sit. A lot of people run away from me when I say you want to sit for a portrait.